Now that we have the part done, we can put dimensions on it. So I always like to start with this view here. And what I would do is put the dimensions that are most critical, which would be the hole dimensions. So switch back to the background here. Under annotate, we have the dimensions. I can select the edge of this circle and the edge of this circle and get a dimension. But that is not how we should do it. The reason why we shouldn't do it this way is the first thing I should do in the front view is go to properties and turn on the center axis with no fillets. No view should have fillets shown for the most part. 99% of the time this is always off. I don't have a pattern to show, so it wouldn't matter if I have this on or off, and I should always show hidden lines on my orthographic views. The reason why I want center line axis is when I select OK, I want the center lines for the holes to dimension to. You notice that there is no gap from this extension line to this part. So that is incorrect. So we're going to delete this constraint and reinsert the feature called dimensions. Grab the end of that line and the end of this line and drag this constraint down. If you do not have a gap from the end of the extension line to the crosshair, then it's not correct. These must have a gap. This is called the overrun, the extension line, and then the overrun goes past the arrowhead, and this line here is the dimension line. This is a critical dimension because I want to create the holes to be a certain distance apart. Now a pin probably fits through this, or something's going through this, so all these holes have to line up. So the critical dimension would be from here, constraint from here to here. And that's how that should look. I'm dimensioning from the center of the hole to the hole, hole to hole, to hold this a tight tolerance. Now, being that it's done this way, this is really not the best technique. These two constraints should be created all at once, and the proper technique for doing that is the stack dimension. Stack dimension, what you want to do is grab your first hole, your last hole, and then any holes in between it will figure out for you. And what it will do is it will create the spacing correctly already. Alright, to hold the constraint, for the part to hold symmetry, we have to use stack dimension again, and we're going to go from the outside line to this outside line to this center line, and again it stacks it correctly. Alright, so when I highlight this whole thing and do a right click properties, under value we will numdink these so that there are two place precision, making this an ANSI drawing. Alright, now the next problem. This 2-inch dimension has an overlapping extension line. So I'm going to try and right click on this and go to properties. And then under extension line, we are going to just turn one off, hit apply, wrong one. Turn this one on, turn this one off, hit apply. That one is now off. Select OK. Now I do not have duplicating extension lines. Really, I don't normally care, but I have to take this extension line and this extension line and move it off because there's no gap that you can see when you're zoomed out. So I gotta bring this up. there's no gap here and here. There's not enough of a gap. So again, I'm going to click on this, right click properties. You got overrun and blanking. Do you know which one you need to change? Let's just bump this up to 5 and see what it looks like and hit apply. See how there's more gap now? I just can't be touching that part or any part of that curve. I select OK, and that's how I clean that up. Alright, the reason why we dimension it this way is because it keeps it symmetrical. I'm going from here to here is 2 inches. So from this edge to this edge, the minimum condition would be 397. The maximum condition would be 4.03, given we're using the plus or minus 30 thou tolerance. The maximum condition between the two holes will be 3.03, 3 and 30 thou, 3.03. The minimum condition between the two holes will be 2.97. Okay, so that holds it within engineering tolerance. I want to make sure that these holes are really tight. When you get into my next class, I'm actually going to show you how to tighten this up even more to make sure that these holes will fit whatever part's going into it. All right, we can go back to just your regular dimensions. Dimension this corner here. And that drives me nuts. I got to change this to a radius. So I right click to pull up the contextual menu and I select radius center. Click this over here, and this also drives me nuts. I got to go into the properties and I got to add that shoulder. So I go to dimension line and say 2 parts. Select OK, and that's how you get this shoulder here. All right, I'm going to also, I want to add text, and what happened was I can't do anything with this because they did an update, and when they did that update they screwed up all my preferences. So I got to go to preference, and under drafting there's a tab called handles, and we got to turn all these on over here on the modification tab. This is modification. We leave them off for creation. When you get better at it, some people like to have it on, but as a new user, I'm just going to have you turn these all on. And then under the text editor, we'll turn all these on. And then I'll select OK. And this time when I have my text highlighted, you actually get triangles and arrows that allow me to move this back and forth. You get arrows that will allow me to add stuff like capital letter typical. By the way, they have it in parentheses. They never put it in parentheses. It's just typical at the end. That would cover this radius, this radius, this radius, and this radius. What I now need is a constraint for this radius. Right click, properties, dimension line. Again, you got to add 2 parts for that. That's my radius. And this is a diameter. So I'm going to try and click on this side, go to dimension, right click, properties, add 2. Also, only 1 symbol, which is good. Select OK. Right click, object, swap it to a diameter. Now it's a diameter call out, and I can move. Select. Oh, I don't want typical there. So I can just click this triangle and then delete that. Select OK. And in this case, it put 2 arrowheads on there, so I got to right click properties. Turn off symbol number 2 under the dimension line tab. Turn off symbol 2, apply. See there's a single arrowhead now. Select OK. One more dimension for here. And again, we got to right click, swap that to a center, diameter center. So if you do it at the time of creation, you can use your contextual menu and switch it to center or diameter. And then we got to right click properties. Sorry. Click a location, then right click in properties. 2 parts again, single arrowhead. Select OK. Now you can't just say typical for this. This actually has to tell it how many holes we have if we have 2 of them, okay? You can't just say typical, we have to literally count them out. This one is just a radius, you can say typical, and then you don't have to count how many you got. You could have 100 on there. As long as you said typical, they're all covered. Okay, now the problem is I don't have a dimension from here to the hole. In reality, I would create a constraint from here to here. I always do that. I'm going to hit undo and try again. We'll try from the datum to this edge over here. Okay, that controls the hole this way, and I know that this is a symmetrical hole, so everything is set. The only problem is I don't have this hole set vertically. Okay. Now, I wouldn't dimension from the datum here because I want the holes to have a tighter dimension. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a stack dimension, and I'm going to dimension from here to the last one and then everything on the inside. Oh, that drives me nuts. Let's delete this dimension here and try that again. Stack dimension from here to here, and then zoom in real close so you make sure you're getting just this line here. Okay, because I want a dimension from this hole to this hole. And that pretty much concludes all the constraints for this part. So what you have to do in the end is highlight them all, right click properties, or you could individually pick the ones you want, but I'm just going to grab the whole thing and change the dimension value to numdink that for all of them and 2 places and select OK. And that's how that part has to get dimensioned. Now these are too tight, so we have to click on here, right click, and go to properties, and we use a system tab, and we'll change this to 15 and see how it looks. I'm going to drag this out. Another problem, sometimes it doesn't like this part here. I'm going to try to click on this. I'm going to grab those white arrows to drag this out. The only problem is it's illegal because I have to have a shoulder. So I'm going to right click on this and go to properties. I'm going to try and put it on the shoulder under extension line. No, I mean dimension line. We have to do that 2 part again. Select apply and hit OK. The only problem is this has to go on the other side, so I drag it over here. Alright, and that concludes how to dimension this part correctly. So if you look at the part they gave us, whoops, damn it. This part here, this is not dimensioned correctly per ANSI ASME specs, because if I dimension this at 0.47 and I dimension this at 1.03, the distance between these 2 holes is going to be 0.56 rather than 0.50. Okay, same with what I talked about for these other holes. So in this example is the proper way to dimension this per your ANSI ASME specs and per tolerancing buildup. So you don't want to make sure that when you dimension this part, you don't have the tolerance buildup. We'll conclude this by adding in the datums and the title block in the next video.